Kyle was a gifted swordsman who rose to become a hero and defeated the Demon King. However, during that battle, he ended up losing everyone he ever loved. But when a strange crystal hurls him 4 years into the past, he begins training to become stronger than ever so he can change the course of his destiny. On the continent of Lunders, two opposing sides exist. On the right dwell the races blessed by the god of light, such as humans, dwarves, and elves. And on the left live the demons, who are blessed by the god of darkness. These two factions have clashed endlessly for thousands of years. But 300 years earlier, a surprisingly gentle demon king took the throne and halted all offenses against the humanoids. Humans and the other races gradually grew comfortable with this temporary era of peace and were unprepared for things to shift. In the 5th month of 2826, a new demon king ascended the throne, and under his command, the demon army unleashed a massive assault on the humanoids, which later became known as the Great Invasion. The merciless onslaught quickly destroyed numerous humanoid kingdoms, and even the greatest empire failed to defend itself. As the situation became increasingly hopeless, the humanoids resolved to take a desperate measure by uniting their remaining forces and facing the demons in a full-scale war. While their armies fought the demon forces and their generals, a group of their strongest fighters was dispatched to infiltrate the Demon King's castle and assassinate him. Kyle leads this assassination squad, accompanied by his closest friend Theron and the elf mage Oza. As they sprint through a corridor, an explosion suddenly separates them and kills the random soldiers accompanying them. Theron is wounded by the blast, but upon spotting two demons guarding a chained female demon, he realizes he must hold them off for the sake of the mission. He urges Kyle and Oza to continue on without him, promising he will rejoin them once he finishes there. And Kyle understands that his friend intends to sacrifice himself to stall the two demons. While Theron fights the demons by himself, Kyle and Oza reach the throne room. Kyle gulps down some highly concentrated Roy juice to fight at his full power. Oza looks sorrowful because she knows he will lose his life once the medicine's effects end due to its side effects. Kyle then pushes open the door to the throne room and discovers a glowing gemstone at its center. Curious about it, he moves closer to inspect it, when suddenly Oza warns him that an attack is coming from above. Kyle blocks part of the incoming dark orbs with his sword, but the rest strike him and force him to his knees. Then a larger, more threatening orb hurtles toward him while he is unable to move, but Oza steps forward to shield him. She casts a magic barrier to protect them, yet the orb pierces through it and begins devouring her. Oza gives Kyle one final smile before she is erased from existence. And at that moment, the Demon King descends from the ceiling. Kyle rises to confront him, channeling his fury into strength, and charges ahead, slashing through the Demon King's dark orbs. However, he is unable to inflict any real damage, as the Demon King is covered by a dense barrier of mana. Kyle is forced to retreat due to the Demon King's relentless assault, hiding behind a pillar. The Demon King simply uses the Void Orb to consume the pillar itself, leaving Kyle without a place to hide. He gets pushed back and badly injured by the dark orbs. Then he asks the AI chatbot inside his sword's magic stone about the strange attack earlier. The upgraded Alexa informs him that it was an unavoidable high-tier spell that destroys anything it touches. Kyle realizes he cannot win unless he is prepared to give up his own life. He orders Alexa to unleash the gemstone's power. Alexa follows his command, and the gemstone's energy envelopes Kyle in a bright aura that automatically repels every attack from the Demon King. He dashes forward at full speed, shattering the Demon King's blade and stabbing him through the chest. But the Demon King retaliates, landing a fatal blow on him as well. Kyle keeps pushing onward until both the magic stone and his sword break. But that is enough to annihilate the Demon King, who bursts into a scatter of black feathers. Kyle believes that it is finally over, and he can now die peacefully. He reflects on how everything he tried to protect has vanished, his family, his friends, and even the girl he loved. He collapses, but then a dark feather drops beside him and disappears. And immediately afterward, the magic gemstone begins to shine. Kyle gets up and realizes that if the crystal loses control, the consequences will be catastrophic. Struggling with each step, he approaches it, takes hold of the magic crystal, and suddenly a magic circle forms around him. When Kyle opens his eyes again, he finds himself in his room, and his town remains untouched. He begins to cry, thinking he is dreaming before passing into the afterlife. But then his childhood friend Lee comes into the room to wake him. She becomes worried when she sees Kyle crying, but he cannot contain his emotions upon seeing her again. He hugs her tightly, and Lee, the disposable bombshell, blushes furiously from embarrassment. Since Kyle believes she isn't real, his hands drift a bit too far downward. He then loses his balance and falls on top of Lee while she is lying on the bed. That is more than she can handle, so she hurls Kyle back and hits him with a rib-crushing punch that leaves him gasping. She yells at him to at least buy her dinner before trying to reach second base, then bolts out of the room. Only afterward does Kyle realize he can feel pain, which means this isn't a dream. He suddenly notices that the red crystal from the Demon King's castle is still with him, leaving him confused. He sees that he looks younger and has no injuries at all, worsening the confusion, but he starts considering the possibility that he has returned to the past. He immediately dismisses the idea because time travel is impossible, otherwise someone would have shown up at Stephen Hawking's party. Suddenly, his hunger distracts him, and he finds a lavish meal prepared for him. He knows Lee must have made it because neither he nor his mother can cook, and he feels grateful to have her. Since he is tasting homemade food for the first time in years, he overeats and finishes everything. And when his best friend Theron arrives, he panics. He asks Kyle if he is training to defeat Luffy in a food-eating contest. He is disappointed because he wanted to eat the delicious-looking meal too. Kyle abruptly asks him what day it is, and upon learning that it is the 5th month of the year 2823, Kyle freaks out because this means he truly has gone back in time. Theron reminds him that today is his birthday and says he will forgive him for devouring all the food as a birthday present. Theron then decides to beg Lee to cook something for him, and Kyle chooses to seek answers from the most knowledgeable person he knows. He steps into a storage room beside his house and goes down into the basement, which his mother converted into a library. The moment Kyle sees her, he is reminded of the trauma he experienced when he saw her corpse in the past, but he snaps out of it when she speaks. Kyle tells his mother he has a question about magic. And since she is one of the few archmages in the entire nation, hardly anyone knows more about magic than she does. She becomes happy hearing that he wants to ask her something, and Kyle finally asks whether there are any spells capable of turning back time. She tells him that there are indeed spells that manipulate time, but they are nearly impossible to cast because they require an extraordinary amount of mana. She explains that even the most powerful magician in all of history was unable to reverse time by even a single second. Kyle then asks whether it might be possible if someone used a magical device capable of storing mana. His mother replies that it is an interesting thought, but gathering that much mana would require at least 1,000 years. Kyle asks, what if someone uses the forbidden rite that converts a person's life force into magical energy? His mother considers it seriously and says that this method would also be inefficient. She believes that at least half the continent's population would need to be sacrificed to produce that amount of mana. And even then, no magical tool exists that could contain such an enormous quantity of mana. However, there is one exception. Kyle's mother pulls out a book and tells him about the heart of the legendary divine dragon, which the ancient magic kingdom of Zarls once used to flourish. But eventually, the dragon's heart lost its power, and the kingdom collapsed because they could no longer sustain it. His mother explains that the dragon's heart could store enough energy to travel back in time, but it disappeared around 1,000 years ago when the ancient kingdom fell. She believes the demons may have discovered it already, and Kyle cannot reveal that her suspicion is correct. Later, Kyle heads to his favorite spot overlooking the town, questioning why the Demon King had been gathering mana to journey into the past. At that moment, Lee arrives, still upset about what happened that morning. Kyle drops to his knees and apologizes, saying he acted that way only because he had a deeply troubling dream earlier. Lee realizes the dream was about her dying, so she decides to forgive him because of that. She then wishes him a happy birthday, and he is immediately reminded of the demon army invasion that struck his hometown first since they lived near the border region. The demons burned their town to ash, killing everyone, which is how he lost Lee. He had vowed to avenge her, but this time he resolves to protect her and everyone he cares about. He declares that he will change his destiny and the fate of the entire world, no matter the cost. That night, he writes down every major event that will happen soon to better prepare himself for what is coming. But he knows that won't be enough. He thinks he should begin by restarting his training, so he heads into the forest to assess his current abilities. The first thing he does is form a mental image of the Demon King and begins fighting the memory of him. The Demon King turns out to be the imaginary friend final boss, and Kyle physically feels his attacks as he tries to block them with his sword. He cannot keep up with the Demon King's rapid strikes because his body is out of practice. So, he decides to enhance himself with magic to compensate. He casts spells to boost his speed and agility and discovers that his magic is far more effective now. Not questioning it too much, he charges directly at the Demon Lord, who at first acts like a stormtrooper missing all his shots, but eventually lands an unexpected headshot on Kyle. Kyle hits the ground, realizing that even with stronger magic, his body cannot match his skills, and he must work hard if he wants to reshape the future. As he catches his breath on the ground, Lee and Theron watch him from behind the bushes, wondering what has gotten into him because only 3 days earlier, he would have given up already. Just then, Theron's mother, Isla, arrives. After checking in with Lee and Theron, she asks what is going on with Kyle because it looks like he is training to fight an incredibly fast and powerful enemy. Lee responds that she is confused too, because just days ago, Kyle was unmotivated and depressed, and Theron confirms it. Isla comments that when a man suddenly becomes motivated like that, the cause is usually a woman, and Lee is stunned to hear it. Seeing her shock and jealousy makes Isla retract her assumption, saying that if Kyle were to get to second base with someone, it would obviously be with Lee. Lee doesn't understand that, and in her jealousy, she storms straight over to Kyle and grabs him by the collar. She demands to know who he has been fooling around with as she shakes him violently. In the end, Kyle vomits his breakfast, which appears to have been mostly salad judging by the color. Later, she prepares a delicious lunch to apologize for her jealous outburst, and everyone is grateful for it. Now that they are all together in one place, Kyle decides to ask them who holds enough authority to attract the attention of multiple nations. Theron says that any king is capable of that, and Kyle's mother notes that the highest-ranking priests of the Earth Goddess also wield great influence. Isla thinks a bit longer and mentions that hero Randolph, the man who defeated the Demon King 300 years ago, is also highly respected and all humanoid races would listen to him. With this answer, Kyle realizes that he cannot become a king or a high-ranking priest in just 2 years, but he can become a hero, and through that he can convince humans to prepare for war. Later that night, Kyle is alone studying in his room. When Theon arrives, he is startled to find Kyle surrounded by countless books and asks whether he is truly certain about becoming a hero. Kyle replies that he intends to work hard for it and asks Theron if he has any suggestions that might help. Theon simply tells him to go defeat the Demon Lord because doing that would guarantee he is recognized as a hero. But Kyle reminds him that Loki is the ultimate objective. Theon then comments that strength is necessary for anyone to be acknowledged as a hero. Kyle, however, believes that money is even more important. He explains that although a hero does not accept rewards or payment for helping others, he still needs money to travel and maintain his gear. Theon acknowledges the logic in his statement, and then Kyle tells him that another thing a hero must have is connections with wealthy and influential individuals. The third requirement for becoming a hero is luck, and Kyle says that only people who happen to be in the right place at the right time ever get the opportunity to rise and earn the title of hero. He proclaims that he is willing to do anything to become one. Theon says that this is not something a genuine hero would normally say. He senses that Kyle does not actually want to be a hero for its own sake and that Kyle views the title as merely a stepping stone toward some other goal. Kyle admits that he is correct but simply asks Theron to trust him regarding that. Theon wishes him good luck, though Kyle already intends to involve him in his plans soon. Kyle then continues working on his strategy for gaining money, connections, and luck. Eventually, he informs Isla, who is also his teacher, that he will be departing on a journey. Isla tells him that it is a wise decision and asks him to take her son with him. That was exactly what Kyle had planned. As he thanks the muscle mommy for her approval, Theron asks why nobody seems to care about his consent. Shortly after, Kyle tells Lee about his plan to travel to the capital and beyond. Before she can respond, Kyle firmly states that he will not take her with him regardless of how much she begs. She becomes angry that he is bringing Theron but not her, insisting that she is also strong and has been training. Kyle tells her that it is bros before hoes and explains that he wants her to remain somewhere safe because his journey will be dangerous. Lee is about to protest again, but Kyle quickly kisses her, leaving her utterly stunned. He promises that when he comes back, she will be the first person he wants to see. Lee cannot argue with that and simply asks him to promise that he will return home safely. Afterward, they go to the market to buy supplies before he leaves. There, Lee notices a beautiful elf girl in the distance. The moment Kyle sees her side profile, he recognizes the elf named Oza and walks toward her, completely ignoring Lee. When he reaches Oza, he recalls how she became the main girl in his life after he lost Lee in his previous lifetime. He remembers a moment from their intimate past when she told him to use her true name in private. But Kyle unintentionally calls her by her real name out loud in public. The elf girl, who normally goes by the name Oza, is startled to hear this because she is meeting Kyle for the first time. She prepares to draw her weapon, and Kyle panics when he realizes what he has done. He grabs her hand to stop her and casts a spell to put her to sleep because he knows her true name. She collapses into his arms, and as Kyle tries to figure out how to explain everything to her later, he realizes a bigger problem awaits him. Lee is standing behind him, seething with fury, because she just caught this man cheating mere hours after their first kiss. He attempts to explain the situation, but she refuses to listen and declares that she will accompany him on his journey to make sure he does not hoe out while she is waiting for him. Meanwhile, Oza wakes up in Kyle's house and is moments away from killing him. She demands to know how he knows her real name when only she and her parents are aware of it. Kyle cannot tell her that she will reveal it to him herself 4 years later when they fall in love, so he simply promises to explain everything eventually. Oza is not satisfied with that answer. Kyle then suggests that they can sign an application contract that prevents him from using her true name for malicious purposes. Oza is stunned because ordinary humans do not know about such contracts, and she asks if he is serious, since breaking that type of contract means death. Kyle tells her he is serious and willing to form it immediately. However, she says she can only perform the contract under a full moon, which is still a few days away. She states that she will stay in town until then, but Kyle surprises her by saying he will be leaving on his journey the next day. Oza has no option except to go with him. So Lee decides to join too, determined not to let an elf steal her man. The next morning, when Kyle and his group are ready to depart, his mother becomes emotional, and his father is also there, though Kyle barely recognizes him because he is almost never around. With that, the four of them set off on their journey. Kyle essentially wears Oza down until she agrees to join his party. He says they will head to the capital later because first he wants to go to the Sunyaward Mountains, which contain the dungeon of the legendary Magic Queen. Theron says it is only a myth, but Kyle pulls out a map of the dungeon, insisting that it is real. The map even marks the location of the treasure room. Both Theon and Lee pity him, convinced that he was scammed into buying a fake map, and Kyle understands why they think that. However, when Oza examines the map and explains that it is made from the bark of the world tree using technology that vanished 2,000 years ago, meaning the map is authentic, Theon and Lee instantly believe her, irritating Kyle. They then comment that the treasure room is extremely far away and reaching it will take a long time. Kyle tells them not to worry because he already has a plan. His plan is simply to dig a tunnel straight to the treasure room to reach it faster. As Kyle and Theron dig, Oza assumes the role of taskmaster, ordering them to work properly. When they take a break at night, Lee has already prepared dinner for them using the bear she killed with her bare hands. After several days of digging, they are just about to reach the treasure room. When Kyle shows up alone, Oza decides it's the right moment to have a serious conversation with him. She wants to understand why he is so desperate to become a hero and whether that goal is connected to the fact that he somehow knows her real name. As Kyle debates whether he should reveal the truth, his hand hits the final layer of the wall, breaking through and exposing the entrance to the treasure room. Their discussion gets cut short, and he immediately tells Oza to call Theron and Lee. They all enter the treasure chamber together, and the sight of the mountain of gold instantly makes Theon lose his mind as he dives into the pile and screams like a lunatic. Kyle warns the girls not to end up like him. Right after that, he chooses to let everyone stay distracted with the treasure and quietly rushes into a hidden room where the true prize is kept, the sword he wielded in his previous life. The sword appears before him as a lowly spirit who starts praising him for overcoming all the trials and making it there safely. Kyle quickly silences her, worried that his friends might overhear. The spirit snaps back at him, telling him he should at least take her to dinner before acting familiar. She asks if he even knows who she really is, and he hushes her again, explaining that he already knows she is a weapon crafted by the magic queen Salonia, who reigned over the magic kingdom of Zarls at its height. He also reveals that he knows the sword contains a fragment of the queen's knowledge and consciousness, and the sword spirit questions how he could possibly know that. Kyle tells her he will explain everything later, but for now he needs to focus on completing the final challenge. The lowly decides to cooperate and returns to the gemstone embedded in the sword's hilt. Kyle then picks up the sword, and the spirit uses her ability to peer directly into his mind. After seeing the memories of his previous life, she instantly materializes again in her human form, demanding to know if what she saw was true. Kyle confirms that everything she witnessed really happened and that he currently possesses the divine dragon's heart. Salonia is stunned that time travel magic actually exists. Just then, Kyle's friends arrive searching for him. He urges Salonia to play along because he does not want them to learn about the past yet, and she reluctantly agrees. The moment Lee and the others reach them, Kyle loudly announces that he just acquired a legendary intelligence sword named Salonia. Before long, the lowly is welcomed into the group as well. As she snacks on cookies baked by Lee, Sil responds to the questions Kyle's friends ask. She explains that she is part of the magic queen Salonia, who left her inside the sword to evaluate those who attempted to claim her treasure. She also reveals that if Kyle had not been worthy to wield her treasure, she would have triggered the final trap, collapsing the entire dungeon and killing everyone inside. But for the moment, she grants him permission to use the sword. She also instructs him to take the magic bag that links directly to the treasure room so he can withdraw whatever amount he needs. Afterward, they travel to the capital city, and Kyle announces that since they now have money, they should buy high-quality equipment. He immediately heads to the most renowned weapon shop in the city. The receptionist greets him coldly and asks whether he has a referral from one of their established clients. Kyle suddenly remembers that this shop is exclusive and requires newcomers to pay a deposit. The receptionist tells him the fee is 10,000 coins per person, so Kyle hands over 5 Zarls coins to cover the entire group. The receptionist quickly escorts them inside, where the shop owner, Vespa, welcomes them. Sil immediately recognizes several weapons created by a distinguished smith from her era and starts rambling about how she personally knew him and thought he wasn't even that talented. Kyle shuts her up, explaining to Vespa that she has an overactive imagination, and they distract her with snacks. Kyle then goes to inspect the finest armor the shop offers. Vespa describes a set crafted from dragon leather and phoenix feathers, explaining that it's extremely costly due to the rare materials, but Kyle purchases it without negotiating. He tells his companions to buy whatever they need for the journey. Lee ends up buying a pair of gauntlets, while Oza chooses an amulet with a spirit stone. Theron picks out armor too, then immediately starts flirting with the receptionist, who runs away thinking he's a creep. After that, Kyle asks Vespa for magic stones. The shopkeeper presents one containing explosion magic, which Kyle decides to buy. He then requests a magic stone effective against reptilian monsters. The shopkeeper brings out a blizzard magic stone, and Kyle tells him he wants every piece in stock along with every bottle of healing potion. Vespa grows increasingly alarmed as Kyle's list of purchases grows, and seeing the full payment nearly makes him faint. After the extravagant shopping trip, Theron worries about the nasty rumors that might start circulating, but Kyle assures him that they will be leaving the capital the next morning, so none of it matters. Theon panics when he hears this and immediately heads to the bars to pick up girls, while Lee and Oza decide to explore the city together. Sil also wants to try all the snacks she can find, but Kyle stops her because he needs to discuss something important privately. Once they reach a hotel room, Kyle asks her whether the future can truly be changed, and Sil explains the theory behind his travel. He ended up in a different universe when he went to the past. She says that although the future will not unfold in exactly the same way, major events will remain consistent, such as the great demonic invasion scheduled to happen in 3 years. Still, she tells him that the future can be altered through effort, and that reassurance is enough for him. Suddenly, Kyle realizes that because he came into this world with the divine dragon's heart, this version of the dragon's heart must still be with the demon king. Sil listens to his concern and says she has a theory. She explains that the most forbidden taboo spell merges souls to enhance magical power. They attempted to research it during her era but failed miserably. She then asks Kyle to think about what happened to this world's Kyle's soul, since he clearly came from another world. Kyle suddenly understands that his soul merged with the soul of this world's Kyle. Syl tells him that he successfully achieved soul fusion, the very thing the brightest researchers of her empire could never accomplish. Kyle remembers the massive surge of magical power he experienced earlier, and everything becomes clear. He asks Syl whether there are any side effects to soul fusion, and she replies that since no one has ever done it before, no one knows. Later that night, Lee and Oza share a room. Lee goes to sleep first, while the elf beauty drinks wine and bathes in the moonlight. She thinks about how well this short trip has gone, and her thoughts eventually drift toward Kyle. She catches herself smiling, but then suddenly remembers that they were supposed to perform a special ritual tonight because it's the full moon. Meanwhile, Kyle is out in the forest catching his breath after intense training. He chats with Syl about how incredible the sword is and how no other mithril sword he has used can compare to it. Syl tells him that the sword is not made of mithril, but before she can finish explaining, Oza runs toward them. Kyle asks why she's in such a rush, and she reminds him that they need to perform the application of contract during the full moon to protect her real name. Kyle realizes he completely forgot and tells her they should postpone it because he's exhausted. But Oza insists they cannot delay it for another month since her true name is at stake. He reluctantly agrees, and Oza begins drawing an intricate magic circle on the ground. The ritual they are about to perform is normally conducted when two elves get married, as they offer each other their true names while vowing to stay together for life. When she first heard Kyle propose the idea, her heart fluttered, and she still cannot believe she is performing a marriage ritual with someone she met only a month ago. Once she finishes the magic circle, she wakes Kyle and tells him to step inside. She then activates the circle for the contract application, and Kyle recalls the last time they performed it. Oza asks him if he swears not to reveal her true name or use it for wrongdoing, and Kyle swears it. She says the contract is complete, but Kyle remembers that they kissed last time, so he suddenly leans in and kisses her. Oza enjoys it for a moment before becoming flustered. She shoves Kyle away, calling him a pervert and demanding to know how he could kiss her like that. He tells her he assumed a kiss was needed to finalize the ritual, but Oza explains that kissing is only part of a wedding ceremony. Kyle nervously says they should treat it as an unfortunate accident, and Oza snaps, attacking him with fire magic. The next morning, Kyle and Oza are exhausted because of what happened the previous night, while Theron is tired from spending the whole night trying to flirt with girls, only to be rejected by every single one. Kyle ignores him and looks toward Ursa, asking whether she plans to keep traveling with them even after the contract application is finished. She responds that she has no choice yet, since he still hasn't explained how he learned her true name. Kyle is pleased to hear that, but Lee interrupts his romantic fantasy by asking why they are heading to the city of Arken. Kyle panics because he can't tell her the real reason, so he claims that Syl can faintly foresee the future and told him to go to Arken. Soon they arrive in the city, and coincidentally Princess Milena of the Zergus Empire is also present for official duties. Crowds gather to catch a glimpse of her, and Kyle and his companions join them. While Milena wins over everyone with her kindness and elegance, Kyle's attention is fixed on her bodyguard Zentos, who used to be one of his close friends in his previous life. Zentos notices Kyle staring at him as well, but he doesn't react at that moment. Meanwhile, Syl asks Kyle if this is the princess he mentioned earlier, and he confirms it, explaining that Princess Milena is going to die 2 days from now. Later, they head back to their room where Kyle tells Syl that Milena is visiting to offer her condolences to villages attacked by the Hydra monster. But 2 days later, when she travels to a nearby village, her group will be ambushed by the Hydra, resulting in her death. Although everyone will assume it was tragic misfortune for the benevolent princess, Kyle believes it is due to Milena's own foolishness because she should not have gone to a location attacked by a monster. Syl says it might also be an assassination attempt. Kyle remembers rumors that Milena's half-brother, Prince Carinus, was behind the attempt, though nothing was ever proven. However, Kyle is suspicious because the prince is currently in the city. Still, he does not make public appearances because he is a shut-in who never leaves his room, just like all of you. Regardless, Kyle doesn't care about the motive, because the only thing he wants is to save the princess and gain recognition as a hero right at the beginning of his career. Kyle says that if he wants to be acknowledged as a hero, his intervention must appear completely natural and organic. Just then, Theron enters the room, saying he couldn't find any information about Princess Milena's schedule. Kyle asks why he was investigating that, and the hopeless romantic answers that he hopes to protect the princess from danger and spark a romantic connection between them. Kyle feels ashamed of himself because he had the exact same idea as his foolish friend. Theron tells him to step aside because he called dibs on Milena first, but Kyle assures him that he already has more women than he can handle. He explains that Milena is actually in danger and once again uses Syl's prophecy ability as his justification. Theron instantly believes him and announces that he will simply follow the princess everywhere. He is confident about his talent for stalking women, and Kyle prays that this idiot does not ruin his plan. The next day, as Milena's convoy departs the town, Kyle and his friends watch from the bushes. The girls ask how they can follow the princess's convoy without being noticed so they can protect her from the imminent danger. Syl tells them she has already solved that problem. She instantly transforms into a hawk, shocking everyone. She explains that she is essentially the gemstone in Kyle's sword, and the body they see is a magical projection she can freely reshape. She flies above Milena's convoy, and Kyle and the others can observe everything through the gemstone on the sword. They all become distracted discussing how this ability could be used for every pervert's favorite pastime. Syl tells them to focus on the visual feed because the situation in the convoy is turning dangerous. The drivers have suddenly begun attacking the guards, and Kyle realizes he must join the battle immediately. By the time he reaches the convoy, the drivers have already defeated all the guards and started a ritual to summon monsters. When they notice Kyle and his group, they prepare to fight, but Kyle uses a speed-boosting skill and knocks them out before they can act. He then ties up the traitors so they can be questioned later. Meanwhile, Theron checks on Milena and finds her alive but unconscious. Kyle instructs him to stay with her and protect her when suddenly a hyena monster lunges at him. He quickly slices it down, but a large pack of hyenas soon surrounds the carriage. Kyle and the girls fight hard to hold them off, but the hyenas turn their attention to the unconscious guards. Kyle asks Theron if he can drive the carriage to safety, but Theron discovers that the reins were cut and must be tied back together tightly. The situation is already tense when the Hydra begins approaching as well. Kyle can tell it will reach them soon based on the rumbling footsteps and tells his friends that their top priority is protecting the princess. He orders Theron and the girls to escort Milena away while he stays behind to battle the Hydra. The girls dislike the idea, but Kyle assures them he is not being reckless and that he actually has a chance of defeating the monster. Urza decides to trust him, and Kyle sprints toward the Hydra. Syl asks if he is certain he can take down such a powerful creature alone, and Kyle says it depends on how many heads it has. The more heads, the stronger the Hydra. He is confident he can defeat a three-headed Hydra. However, when the monster appears before him, he forgets his math, because all he can see is that it has more than 3 heads. Kyle practically soils himself upon seeing the 8-headed Hydra. But it is too late to retreat, so he commits to the fight. He easily dodges the straightforward strikes from the Hydra's heads, but when it breathes poison, he shields himself with his robe. The venom instantly kills the surrounding plants, but Kyle remains untouched thanks to his high-quality armor. He then takes a blizzard magic stone from his bag and hurls it at the Hydra, freezing its movements. Next, he throws an explosion magic stone, severely damaging the creature and tearing open part of its scaly body. Kyle charges forward to exploit the shallow wound and blocks another poisonous breath with his robe. He cuts off one of the Hydra's heads quickly, but it is as pointless as the apologetic texts I sent my ex last night, because the head regenerates immediately. He continues fighting with the same foolish tactic of slicing heads that simply grow back without issue, and soon realizes he has run out of blizzard stones. Despite his constant attacks, the Hydra does not appear even slightly weakened, and Kyle decides to use his final strategy. He rushes toward the Hydra with his superspeed skill, hiding an explosion stone in his hand. The Hydra is too slow to react, and Kyle easily pierces its chest. He widens the wound and stuffs several activated explosion stones inside the monster's body right before being knocked back. Somehow he manages to stand despite the heavy damage, and the Hydra begins advancing furiously toward him. However, the explosion stones detonate simultaneously, blowing the Hydra apart from 3 different angles like a dramatic Indian TV show. The powerful blast scatters the Hydra's body everywhere, and Syl tells Kyle he should have done that sooner to save his supply of magic stones. Kyle replies that it was a last resort move and he cannot rely on such a risky tactic regularly, but he is relieved that he was able to defeat such a formidable monster. On the other hand, Ursa and the others have already taken down the monsters as well, and they decide to go assist Kyle right away. However, he returns at that exact moment, telling them that the Hydra was a difficult foe, but still not strong enough to defeat him. The girls are relieved to hear this, but immediately afterward, they pinch their noses and tell Kyle that he reeks of burnt Hydra flesh and should wash up before coming near them. Kyle feels discouraged because he was expecting more praise from his girls. Nevertheless, he goes to bathe. Meanwhile, Theon is still busy fixing the carriage so it can be used again, and the princess and her attendants remain unconscious. Kyle assumes that they were poisoned, so he asks the girls to give them an antidote. Just then, Theon hands him a small pouch he found nearby, and Kyle realizes it was used to summon the monsters, meaning the whole event was an assassination attempt disguised as a monster attack. As it turns out, Prince Kais really was responsible for the assassination attempt, and Milna's bodyguard Zentos is secretly working with him too. They both receive word that their plan failed, and Zentos decides to dispatch another squad to finish the job. Back in the forest, evening has already fallen when Mila slowly wakes up, shocked that she is still alive. Oza tells her to stay calm, and Mila admits she never expected to open her eyes again. She asks Kyle and his companions if they saved her, and Theron instantly tries to claim all the credit. A single punch from Lee knocks him out, and then Kyle properly introduces himself to Milna, explaining that they are a group of traveling adventurers who saw her convoy under attack and rushed in to help. Right then, her servant wakes up and immediately steps between Mila and Kyle, trying to shield the princess from a stranger. Milna assures her that Kyle and his companions rescued them, so they can be trusted. She then stands up to see the situation outside, and Kyle warns her that the scene is quite grim. Mila disregards that, and the moment she steps onto the battlefield, she becomes an entirely different person. She begins examining the corpses of the drivers, and Kyle explains that they had already killed the guards by the time he arrived. Just then, Syl informs him that a squad of royal knights is on its way toward them, and Kyle relays the news to Milna. She panics when she hears it and insists they must escape immediately because if the royal knights find them here, they will not only kill her, but also Kyle and his companions. Kyle asks why people from her own kingdom would want her dead, and she replies that the person trying to kill her is Zentos. Kyle cannot believe that Zentos would ever do such a thing, but Milna is completely certain. She then instructs her maid Arka to burn every body in the area so the royal knights waste time searching for her among them. She says they need to buy every bit of time they can to escape, then tells her maid to take the reins and drive the carriage. She asks Kyle and his group to accompany her so she can explain everything, and she also throws the monster summoning pouch into the fire, thinking that the wave of monsters it will trigger might delay the knights even more. Later, inside the carriage, Kyle asks Milna if Zentos, the commander of the 2nd Battalion of Royal Knights, is truly the one attempting to kill her. Milna confirms it and adds that Zentos is cooperating with her half-brother Kes. While Theron and Oza are shocked by the family betrayal, Kyle still cannot accept that Zentos would try to murder the princess. Milna tells him she heard it from Zentos himself the previous day. She explains that she was drugged with a sleeping medicine in her drink, and as she was drifting off, she distinctly overheard Zentos and Karina discussing how she would not wake up until the next evening, by which time she would already be inside a monster's stomach. Mila always knew her brother wanted her dead, but she thought he was a pathetic coward who lacked the guts to do it. However, she never expected Zentos to join forces with him. She explains that she normally chooses her guard from the 5th Battalion, which is composed entirely of women, but they are often summoned back to the capital because of how impressive they look during royal ceremonies. That is why Zentos and his battalion were assigned to protect her for this journey. Kyle still struggles to accept that Zentos has become their enemy, and he tells Mila that Zentos has probably already moved on to his next plan since the previous attempt failed. She agrees, and Kyle adds that if Zentos succeeds in killing her, he will likely put the blame on their party, turning them into criminals in the eyes of everyone. Kyle also realizes that because Mila revealed all these details to them, they now know too much, making his group a threat to Zentos as well. So they cannot abandon her. Mila is relieved to see that Kyle is smart enough to understand her reasoning and says they should work together to survive. She promises to reward them once they reach the capital safely, but Kyle replies that they do not need wealth or noble titles, honor and fame will be enough. Mila then shifts to strategy, saying that they are in a favorable situation if they choose to wait. The 5th Battalion is scheduled to arrive in Arkan the next day, and once they learn that she is missing, they will immediately start searching for her. They are just as strong as the 2nd Battalion led by Zentos, and if a conflict breaks out, it will damage Zentos far more than it will harm them. Theron suggests that they hide in a nearby village until reinforcements arrive. But Kyle calls that a foolish idea. Zentos would likely burn the entire village down to kill them, putting innocent lives in danger while still achieving nothing. Kyle suggests that they turn back instead and head toward Arkan, because the city has thousands of people, and their enemies cannot kill them all. Besides, they will meet up with the 5th Battalion faster this way, and together they can overpower Zentos. Mila says that if they turn back now, they will run straight into the pursuers, but Kyle tells her they will handle them when they encounter them. First, they stop to restock their supplies, and during that time, Kyle sends Syl on a reconnaissance mission. Syl discovers that Zentos is not with the knights, and Kyle says that this makes their situation much easier. Milna is amazed by the intelligence capabilities of his sword, and even more shocked when she sees the large supply of magic stones his party possesses. At that moment, Lee hands her a box full of top-tier healing potions, instructing her to drink one if she gets hurt. Milna becomes even more bewildered. She asks, who in the world are these people exactly, and Kyle answers that they are simply a group of aspiring heroes. Meanwhile, Kais is throwing a tantrum because Zentos failed to kill Mila. Zentos, however, calmly reassures him that he has sent his soldiers to finish what the monsters could not. Karen tells him to go and kill the princess himself, but Zentos reminds him that when the 5th Battalion arrives in the city and discovers Milna missing, they will interrogate him, something he would not be able to endure. Kes backs down after hearing that, and Zentos assures him he will not fail in his mission this time. Back in the forest, the knights notice Mila's carriage moving toward them, and the vice-captain orders his men to shoot the horses to force them to stop. They take their positions and prepare to fire when, out of nowhere, several magic stones fall from the sky right in front of them. The knights don't even understand what is happening until the explosions erupt, and the magic stones continue to rain down from above. The vice-captain commands everyone to regroup into formation, but at that exact moment Kyle drives the carriage straight toward him. He quickly rolls aside to avoid being run over while shouting for his soldiers to fire. And on the carriage, Oza and Theron assist Kyle in clearing the way. They push through the knights with no real trouble. Once they reach a safe distance, they gulp down healing potions, thanking God that they are wealthy enough to afford them. Suddenly, the carriage jerks to a halt, and when they step out, they discover that charging through enemy lines was not as safe as they assumed, and one of the wheels has broken. With no option to fix it, they choose to continue forward on foot, and Lee leads the princess and her attendants. Meanwhile, Kyle tells Oza that someone has to stay behind to slow the knights down, or else they will all be trapped at the city gates. Oza protests, saying it's far too dangerous, but Kyle replies that only about 30 knights remain after their earlier attacks, and they can manage that. She gets furious that he's thinking of risking his life again, but Kyle assures her he won't be the one doing it this time. He orders Theron to delay the royal knights, and Theron agrees before he even fully grasps what he just accepted. Soon after, Kyle tells Oza to cast a wind spell on them so they can move faster. It's only when they begin running away that Theron realizes they are leaving him behind. He demands to know where they're going, and Kyle tells him to do his best. He panics when he understands he has truly been abandoned, and soon the knights arrive at his location. However, instead of fighting, Theron waves a white flag and surrenders. He pleads for his life, insisting none of this was his fault and that Kyle was behind everything. He offers them all the money he has and even promises to reveal the dungeon where they found it. But the vice-captain shows no interest. His men quickly confirm that the carriage is empty, and he decides to continue pursuing the princess. As for Theron, he orders his soldiers to get rid of him. Hearing this, Theron immediately clings to him, claiming he will do anything to stay alive, even offering to give a Gluck Gluck 2000 to all the knights there. But the vice-captain, disgusted and angry, chooses to finish him personally. Meanwhile, Oza worries because she is convinced the knights will kill him. Kyle says he would have preferred if no one had to die, and Oza can't believe he's actually serious. But then Lee suddenly realizes they never told her that Theron is actually the strongest among them. Back with the knights, one man has died, and it certainly isn't Theron. Instead, he has killed the vice-captain before the man could even strike. He then begins aura farming right in the middle of the remaining knights, claiming that taking down the biggest guy is the proper way to start a battle. The knights stare in shock as Theron removes his gloves, then takes off his training rings and bracelets that multiply his weight by 10. Feeling much lighter now that his restraints are gone, he cuts down the knights effortlessly as they charge him. He suddenly throws a magic stone at the horses, triggering an explosion that startles them. The horses bolt away, leaving the knights stranded, and Theron is delighted. He slaughters a few more knights before realizing he has done enough. He abruptly drops his sword, announcing that his goal was only to stall them, not wipe them out. Now that their commander is dead and their horses are gone, they cannot possibly catch the princess. Continuing to fight would be pointless and only risk their lives. He tells the knights to withdraw because he doesn't want to kill anyone else, and they accept because they know they can't win. However, he was merely playing with them. Just as they turn their backs, he hurls more explosive magic stones and takes them out. Those still alive are finished off by his quick, ruthless strikes. Theron then collapses in the middle of the blood-soaked field, worn out from both pretending to be an idiot and slaughtering 30 knights by himself. In the city, Zentos feels his connection to the knights vanish and realizes they have all fallen. He decides to handle the situation himself, leaving a few knights to guard Karen's while he rides into the forest alone. Syl spots him heading their way and warns Kyle. But Zentos notices her watching and hits her with an energy blast, knocking her down. Syl remarks that he appears to be both powerful and skilled. That information is enough for Kyle to understand that Zentos is coming straight for them, so he immediately halts the group. He tells Leonosa to protect the princess, and if the situation turns bad, they must retreat and regroup with Theron. Mila asks Kyle if he is truly confident he can fight one of the kingdom's strongest knights alone. He replies that he never wanted to fight him, but now it seems unavoidable. Mila suddenly begins staring at him and then asks why he speaks as if he knows Zentos personally. She wonders if it was really a coincidence that he found her when she was in danger, but she decides that this is not the right moment for such questions. She thanks Kyle for defending her, and he promises he will come back victorious. Dawn soon breaks, and Zentos arrives at the spot where Kyle is waiting. He gets off his horse and approaches, asking if Kyle is the one aiding the princess. Kyle confirms and asks why he came alone when he had more knights with him. Zentos answers that he doesn't want additional men to die for something unrelated to them when he can handle the task himself. In a last attempt to spare his life, Kyle begs Zentos to surrender, even promising to ask the princess to pardon him. Zentos finds the suggestion ridiculous. Kyle then asks why he even attempted to kill the princess in the first place, since wealth and status would never be enough to make him betray her. Zentos refuses to answer and assumes his battle stance. Convinced the fight will be quick and he will soon reach the princess, Kyle mirrors his stance and both cast spells to enhance their speed and strength. They dash forward, and Kyle evades Zentos' first strike. However, that attack was merely an illusion, and the real Zentos was positioned behind it. But Kyle already anticipated that. He dodges the next blow and manages to hit him, breaking a small piece off his magic shield. Zentos is stunned because no one has ever dodged his opening attack before. But he doesn't know that Kyle is familiar with his entire fighting style because Kyle trained under him in his previous life. Still, after getting past the initial lethal combo, Kyle quickly realizes he cannot match Zentos with his current physical strength. He's pushed back rapidly, and Zentos launches energy blasts that cause him to lose balance. Zentos prepares to finish him, but Kyle steps on his sword and uses the momentum to propel himself away. Zentos is offended that he dared to kick a sword, but Kyle says he learned it from his master before tossing an explosive magic stone at him. However, Zentos' reflexes are sharp enough that he knocks the stone back at Kyle, making Kyle take the hit instead. He follows up with a quick strike before Kyle can fully recover, but during the clash, Zentos' sword begins to crack. Realizing that Kyle's weapon is superior, Zentos backs off. Kyle again urges him to surrender because he doesn't want to see him die. Zentos replies that the best way to surrender is simply to be killed. Knowing he can't waste more time, he prepares to end things with his next strike. He assumes his stance, releasing an ominous aura, and Kyle steals himself. Zentos asks for his name before they exchange their final blows, and Kyle introduces himself, telling him to remember it. They charge at each other, and Zentos parries Kyle's attack, leaving him exposed. He then swings with full force, but his sword shatters when it hits Kyle's plot armor, or more accurately, the divine dragon's heart. Zentos realizes he is now at a disadvantage. Kyle fortifies his heart and swings for the killing strike against his old friend. He slashes across Zentos' chest, and Zentos drops to his knees, bleeding heavily. He asks Kyle if he allowed him to deflect his sword on purpose to lure him into this position, and Kyle replies that he did not. Zentos truly outmatched him in every way, but Kyle knew he would aim straight for a killing blow and had prepared himself for that moment. Zentos calls him a peculiar man and quietly apologizes before dying. With a heavy heart, Kyle says sorry as well, explaining that there are things he must protect no matter what, even if it requires taking the lives of old comrades. He breaks into tears because Zentos was one of the people he wished he could have saved, but it is already too late. Meanwhile in the city, Karinas restlessly paces around his room, wondering why Zentos is taking so long. When he hears footsteps approaching, he assumes it is Zentos, but instead the 5th Battalion commander, Kilrun, steps inside and orders her subordinates to storm in and seize the prince. Karinas commands them to leave him immediately, but he freezes the moment Mila enters the room. Mila instructs Kilrun to apprehend Karinas and interrogate him, using force if he refuses to cooperate. She leaves after giving the order, and the arrogant prince's shouts turn into screams as the female knights begin beating him. Outside the room, Mila expresses her gratitude to Kyle and his companions for helping her survive this incident. She escorts them to the royal palace so she can officially thank and reward them, and Theron and Syl instantly lose their composure when they see the beautiful women and the feast prepared there. Kyle apologizes for their behavior, but Mila insists that it is not a problem. At that moment, the king arrives, and she awkwardly grabs his hand instead of embracing him. She introduces him to Kyle and his group, and only Kyle manages to greet the king properly. However, the king says that such formalities are unnecessary. He thanks them for saving his daughter and then begins questioning why Zentos would take part in a plot to assassinate Mila. He instructs Kyle and his companions to keep this matter secret, and Kyle assures him that they will not do anything that harms the nation. Shortly after, an official, but fabricated, story spreads through the kingdom, claiming that Mila and Karinas were traveling through a devastated region when they were ambushed by deadly monsters. The knights under Zentos fought bravely to protect them, but lost their lives, while Karinas was supposedly so badly injured that he is still recovering in a concealed location. The only accurate part of the story is that Kyle saved Mila. Soon, the day arrives for him and his party to receive their rewards. Kyle is honored with a Medal of Honor for rescuing the princess, and the people quickly begin to acknowledge him as a new hero. However, the threat to Mila has not disappeared, because the true mastermind behind the attack was neither Karinas nor Zentos, it was the king himself. This fool is jealous of his daughter, since she surpasses him in talent in every way, and he fears that once she becomes queen and restores the nation's glory, she will overshadow him in history, something he cannot tolerate. As he contemplates how to get rid of Mila, Kyle sneaks into his room disguised as an assassin. The king panics when he sees him, but Kyle swiftly grabs him from behind and covers his mouth before he can shout. Kyle begins explaining how the king rejected the idea of helping the dwarves at the start of the Great Invasion simply to maintain diplomatic superiority. His foolish choice caused the dwarves to lose, enabling the demon army to penetrate the heart of the continent and conquer other lands. Kyle tells him that he could not hold his stupidity against him forever. But when Zentos apologized to him with his dying breath, everything suddenly became clear. Kyle then pushes the king out onto the balcony, stating that it should have been obvious from the beginning that someone as loyal as Zentos would only attack Mila if he had been ordered to do so by the king. The king is drenched in sweat, yet still yells at Kyle, asking what any of this has to do with him. Kyle continues shoving him toward the railing, saying that Mila may be cunning, but at least she is far more intelligent than the entire royal family combined. The king desperately struggles and manages to tear off Kyle's disguise, but it is already too late. Kyle pushes him to his death. The guards panic when they find the king's body and assume he fell from the balcony while drunk. To preserve his image, the official statement claims that he died of a heart attack. The news soon reaches Kyle's group, and Theron secretly feels relieved that the king survived just long enough to grant them their reward, otherwise, they would have had to wait much longer for their medals. He is also glad that Mila will soon take the throne. However,
What troubles the entire group is that she has summoned Kyle for a private meeting before the coronation.
During their meeting, Mila tells Kyle that she is engaged to Prince Mare of the Gargan Empire, shocking him. Mila explains that the Zergus Empire once made an arrangement with the Gargan Empire, and in exchange for granting the territory of Karen, she was promised to the prince. She now intends to formally break off the engagement because the people who arranged it were fools and never even signed an official contract. Additionally, the territory of Karen is not legally tied to the engagement, so it will remain part of the Zergus Empire regardless. However, Mila wants Kyle to visit the governor of Karen and obtain his approval to cancel the engagement before she takes any action herself. This task feels like a heavy burden to Kyle, and later that night he cannot stop dwelling on it. Syl appears beside him and asks what he is so troubled about, and he admits that he is worried about how the Gargan Empire will react. She responds that he should be more concerned about Karen itself, as it appears they are dealing with their own problems. She notes that the governor did not attend the king's funeral, which indicates that something urgent is occupying him. Syl believes this is another one of Mila's clever schemes, hoping Kyle will handle the issue without her directly ordering him to do so. Kyle feels relieved hearing this, since resolving the problem will help enhance his reputation as a hero and because he wants to keep as much distance from Mila as possible. Still, he must meet her once before departing on his mission. During their final meeting, Mila asks him to join the royal guard and become her personal knight, saying she wants him beside her at all times. Kyle is startled by her bold flirting and replies that he has other responsibilities, but if she ever needs him, he will come at once. Mila then casually tells him that she was only teasing and wishes him good luck on his journey. When Kyle returns to his friends, he throws a tantrum because he secretly hoped the princess would actually be interested in him. Regardless, he leads his group back to the elite weapon shop run by the old craftsman Vespa, who is delighted to see Kyle again. He congratulates him on the medal and wishes him even greater accomplishments. When Theron impatiently asks whether his sword is repaired, Vespa immediately presents it, explaining that he had his finest craftsman work on it, but Theron still asks if there is a better one available. The shopkeeper apologizes, saying he has nothing superior at the moment, but promises to use his connections to search for a better sword. Kyle then inquires if he knows anything about Karen, since they are heading there next, and Vespa instantly tells him that it is a difficult place. He says that the blacksmith guild controls the entire city and has caused many problems, making business challenging. However, he notes that conditions have slightly improved ever since Karen became part of the Zergus Empire. Kyle thanks him for the information, and Vespa mentions that Theron may find a sword suited for him in Karen, as the region has a long and distinguished history of weapon making. With that, Kyle and Theron regroup with the girls, and together they begin their journey to Karen. But that is where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.